Throughout my life, I have experienced many different feelings of happiness, sadness, grief, anger, and a lot more. But I would say that the most impressing one to this date is dealing with depression. It's nothing new to me, and I've been depressed for about 3 years of my life. I've gone through so many difficult, challenging times, and I've learned so many new things about myself. My experience started with this one sad event in my life that had an impact on me more than any other. But I remember this one moment in my life when I was at home and I was told that my grandmother had passed away. I was in such shock that for the next few days leading up to her funeral, I showed no signs of emotions. I spent most of my time caring for my mother, who was extremely saddened by the death of her mom. I believe during this time I was attempting to stay strong for the loved ones around me, caring for their needs and emotions before my own. I remember the day of the funeral so vividly, everything that happened and all the people that showed up to show their love and support for the forgotten. It was nearing the end of my grandma's funeral, and my uncles had just finished speaking. I decided that it was my turn to speak because I had some last words to say. And within what felt like a few minutes and a blink of an eye, I looked at the casket which my dead grandmother was laying in and realized that I will never see my grandmother again, or will I be able to ever enjoy an interesting conversation or saying the words, "I love you." From there, life got a lot more challenging. It's hard to remember every emotion that I felt, but some of the strongest were the idea of loneliness. I always felt lonely, staying in my room, detaching myself from the outer world, and would often blame myself for things out of my control. I didn't understand why I felt the way I did and didn't feel the need to reach out for any help. I thought this was just going to pass. 6 to 5 months later, I found out that what I was dealing with was called depression, and if I was going to want to get through it, I was going to need a guiding hand, a better guiding hand than myself. At this point, my parents had had their concerns, along with many other people in this world, so they and I both decided to get therapy help. It's important to understand therapy is a great way to get ideas out of your head and have someone to talk to about who feeling times of loneliness or sadness, as well as therapy. Continuing with my support, I roughly went through 5 to 8 different therapists before I chose the one I liked. I worked with him for about 3 to 5 months and learned so much from him. But of course, that wasn't my only therapist. I went through another 4 therapists after that, just due to a feeling of disconnection from him and feeling that he had taught me everything I needed to know. I was ready to learn from someone else. I have a school therapist from Tamascal who is ready to do a phone interview. I prepared some ideas that I have thought about with previous therapists, and I'm going to share them with her, and I have written down some questions that I'm going to ask her as well. So here is her response. and a great person overall. Um, why don't we just dive right into this? So,
Okay.
I've been in therapy and I've learned many different things. And one of my first and favorite ideas that I was taught was to notice my emotions and how they might change throughout the day, and be prepared to write down certain feelings and ideas on a notepad or someplace where I can go back at the end of the day and do some self reflecting and be able to describe what I was feeling in that situation to my therapist.
Hmm.
How might that be beneficial to somebody who is new to the idea of depression and might feel lost with overwhelmed emotions?
Yeah, I think that's a great technique for somebody new at therapy, but also for anybody who's been doing it for a while. I think that it's all about just becoming more aware of your feelings and how they change throughout the day and how different little things can impact them. So, journaling them and tracking them like that um, really helps to bring awareness to it. And I think the ultimate goal of that is, so at first you just work on mindfulness and noticing your emotions and when they come up. And then the next step is learning how to take that knowledge to be able to be more proactive about how to respond to different situations. So something that we talk about a lot in therapy can be responding versus reacting. So if you're not aware of your emotions and you get kind of caught up with feeling angry or sad, you might react. And that's when you snap at somebody or you yell or you say or do something you might regret. But if you're able to learn this technique that you described to increase your awareness and know, like feel the emotions building and know which situations might trigger certain emotions, then instead of reacting, you can learn how to respond. Like you can take a moment and think about, okay, this is what's going on, and here's how I want to handle it. And it's just done with more intention. And I think that that's a really great technique to learn to help with that.
Definitely. I couldn't agree more with what you just said. Just one other question to kind of relate to that topic.
Mm-hmm.
Why is communication so important during depressing times?
Mm. Um, that's a great question. I think for a few reasons. I think that when people feel depressed, they have a tendency to withdraw, which means that they move away from other people and they kind of focus inward and don't communicate. That's sort of the natural tendency. And when people do that, it can lead to some like negative spiraling and thoughts that just run out of control and feeling really down and hopeless and like there's no way out. Um, so it's a good example of almost like acting opposite your urges. So if your urge is to withdraw and be alone and just be introspective and think about what's going on, acting opposite of that urge would be communicating, would be reaching out for help, would be telling your parents, telling your friends, telling your therapist. And what that does is builds a strong community around you so that you have people there to support you, um, who can help you with more balanced thinking and to see things a little differently and to know that you're not alone, kind of to pull out from that hopeless place and kind of depressive spiral that people can get into.
Definitely. I remember going through that idea of it's just me, myself, and I in this world. And then when I was able to communicate with other people, it really opened up my eyes to a whole group of beneficial people. Beneficiary?
Yeah,
Something like that.
it's great.
So the
Yeah.
next idea that was very, very helpful for me, at least, was to create a healthy lifestyle for myself. So basically, I thought of a few activities that I could do by myself or with another person. And some of these came along as just listening to music while on a hike, or going to the gym, or going surfing, going on a run, a bike ride, anything that can get me outside and to live a healthier and more positive lifestyle, with new challenges that arise every day, was a very beneficial thing for me during my therapeutic time. Um, I guess maybe why would it be important for someone who is going through a depressing time to get outside? And then I guess I could ask the other question after.
Okay. Um, yes, good question. I think it is super important. There's a lot of ways that it can benefit people. I think, you know, for somebody like you or I who loves being outside and nature, just getting outside of the house and being in that space can remind you that the world is bigger than what's going on inside your head and your emotions, and can be can give you a sense of hopefulness, that there's so much more out here, and make you feel connected to the rest of the world. Also, just in general, a lot of the things you mentioned that help you to stay healthy, like exercising, going to the gym, making sure you get enough sleep.
Also, eating's a
Eating
great
regularly, it's huge. Yeah, and all of those things, they just reduce your vulnerability to being overtaken by difficult emotions. They make you more resilient and more able to deal with difficult things as they come, because hard stuff is always going to come up in life. But if you're already vulnerable because you're hungry or you're tired or you haven't worked out, then sometimes the hard emotions can take over. So it's like emotional hygiene to do that stuff, to make sure that you're in the most strong, resilient place that you can be to deal with everything that comes your way.
Definitely, of course. And another thing was, my list was, a lot of activities that helped me, and maybe you aren't able to get outside, just due to your environment or other causes. What might be some great beneficial activities that you can do possibly inside, or let's say it's raining and I guess, yeah, inside, that would still give you that feeling of accomplishment and gratitude?
Mm-hmm. That's a great question, especially right now during all the shelter in place stuff. Um, and I also love that the words that you use, that those feelings of accomplishment and gratitude, because I think that's exactly what we're going for. I think there are a lot of things you can do inside. I think you can still work out inside. You can still listen to music. You can still connect with friends over the phone or other ways. But something that I found really works when you're inside and makes people feel connected and feel that gratitude is anything that engages like your creative side. So making art or journaling or learning a new song on guitar, anything that sort of engages that creativity, where you feel like you're making something and you're doing something and you feel productive and good, and it's also an outlet for your emotions. I think that those are some of the best things that you can do when you're stuck inside.
Yeah, I really like that drawing idea. I might have to go give that one a try after this. My last and final idea, and maybe one of the most that has helped me throughout this idea of depression, has been to accept the things that I cannot change and to live every day with an attitude of gratefulness and open mind for new things to come into my life. I can never forget the past mistakes I've made, but rather I use them to learn how I can be a better person in the future, whether that's in a new relationship or how I'm going to treat a friend or how I'm going to treat myself even when a difficult situation arises. I find that, it's hard to get yourself to be motivated during a vulnerable time. What might be, I guess, what are some skills to help somebody move forward in life who is feeling lost or stuck at how they are living right now?
Um,
And then that'll be the last question.
I kind of I feel like you sort of answered your question in reverse, actually. But some of the things that you mentioned at the beginning of this question, when you talked about accepting things that you can't change, practicing gratefulness, practicing having an open mind, um, learning from past mistakes instead of just getting down on yourself for them, but taking them as learning opportunities. All of those things you mentioned are really good things that can help people to feel unstuck and get motivated. I think one of the biggest roadblocks that I often see when people have that kind of stuck feeling is that they're fighting reality. So it's these are kind of some DBT like terms, but say something bad happens in your life or something you don't like. For example, we're all stuck inside because of this coronavirus thing, and it sucks and it's hard. People can get so caught up in being angry about what's going on and fighting reality, being like, this is so unfair. I'm so upset that I have to stay inside. I hate this, to the point where it becomes not the actual event that's making you feel bad, but your feelings about it. So it's you fighting reality that actually is making you feel worse than what's really going on. So then one of the techniques that therapists will use is called radical acceptance. And it's just a way of accepting reality for what it is. It doesn't mean that you have to like it. It's a balanced way of thinking. So you could say something instead like, this is really difficult and I'm having a hard time and I'm missing all of the things that I used to do, but it is what it is. It's happening, and I'm going to find a way to make the most of it and get through it. So it's acknowledging that something is hard. It's not pretending everything's fine. It's saying, this is hard. It's happening. I don't like it. And yet I'm going to keep going. And yet, here's the positive spin on it. Here's how I can get through it. Something like that. So acceptance is huge. Being grateful for what you do have is really huge too. And I think those can all help increase motivation and unstuck you if you get stuck somewhere. If you just, hey, this sucks, but it is what it is, and I'm going to be okay.
Definitely. Well, thank you so much for your time, and I appreciate you doing this interview.
You're welcome.
All right, that's it for Kimberly. I hope you guys enjoyed that little phone interview with Kimberly. I really appreciated her work and her having time to talk to me. Now, one last thing I wanted to talk about before I head off is the idea that life continues on after you think you've completed the task of getting through depression. You're not going to go through life and be, oh, I'm not depressed anymore. I'm all happy. You'll still be saddened by some things throughout life. That's just normal. That's human. But you have to remember, as life moves forwards, everything changes around you, and you are faced with new challenges. But what is important is that you remember everything that you have been taught and everything that you learned, and use them in your daily life. Take notice to your emotions and your feelings, because you will be a happier and more wholesome person depending on how you get through your day.